Live from the BDN Studios, it's Bang and Dang.
That's awesome.
If you don't like that, then
You ain't black.
Welcome back to Battles of the American Civil War with your hosts, Bang and Dang, and moving on to the Battle of Perryville, which is apparently the culmination of the Confederate Heartland Offensive, which is a.k.a. the Kentucky Campaign. See some familiar faces here, like Leonidas Polk over on the Confederates, as well as Price. And then you got Beauregard, Grant, Buell, and Pope on the other side. Not really Grant, though. He doesn't really do anything in this, but he's commanding the overall. He's the guy over there on that side. But, yeah. Getting closer to the end of 1863. We're now October 8th.
Oh, 1862.
I said getting closer to the beginning of 1863. It's freaking meant. Battle of Perryville, also known as Battle of Chaplain Hills, October 8th, 1862, in Chaplain Hills, west of Perryville, Kentucky. So it's actually Chaplain Hills Battle, not Perryville.
Right.
Which was situated between the southern state of Kentucky, obviously. Obviously, we know Kentucky was coveted by both sides of the conflict because of its central location and control of key rivers, particularly the Ohio. September 1861, Kentucky-born President Abraham Lincoln wrote in a private letter, he says, "I think to lose Kentucky is to nearly lose the whole game."
Oh, shit.
Opposing political elements within the state vied for control during the early part of the war, and the state legislature declared official neutrality to keep out both the Union and Confederate armies. Well, that didn't work.
No.
Because it was first violated on September 3rd, 1861, when Confederate Major General Polk occupied Columbus, considered key to controlling the lower Mississippi.
Fantastic. 2 days later, Union Brigadier General Ulysses S. Grant seized
Paducah. We got that battle. We'll go look it up.
Henceforth, the proclaimed neutrality was a dead letter. While the state never seceded from the Union, Confederate sympathizers who were members of the legislature set up a temporary Confederate capital in Bowling Green in November of 1861. No shit. It never wielded significant power inside the state, though. The Confederate states recognized Kentucky and added a star representing the state to the Confederate flag. After the Battle of Shiloh on April 6th and 7th, the beaten Confederate Army under Major General Pierre G.T. Beauregard retreated down into Corinth, and we all know what happened there. Very slowly persuaded by the combined forces of the Union under Major General Henry Halleck, the armies of Grant, Buell, and John Pope.
Well, he wasn't persuaded by them, but he was pursued.
Right, pursued.
Right.
Persuade.
Although Halleck had 100,000 men under his command and Beauregard half or less of that number, took him 51 days to march 20 miles from Pittsburgh Landing to Corinth.
Oh, shit.
Which was abandoned by the Confederates on May 29th.
That's ridiculous.
Confederate President Jefferson Davis, unhappy with Beauregard's retreat, removed him from command and gave Braxton Bragg the army, which he renamed the Army of Tennessee.
All right.
Bragg spent most of June drilling and reorganizing the army in Camp Tupelo in Mississippi. The Union armies ignored him, and the war in Tennessee virtually ground to a halt during the summer months. I'm like, got bigger things to do here.
All right. You do what you do. Grant's Army of the Tennessee was scattered.
Wow, Bragg.
What did he do?
Stole the Army of the Tennessee name from Grant.
Yeah, what did he do? Grant's Army of the Tennessee was scattered about western Tennessee, northern Mississippi, while Buell's Army of Ohio was moving towards Chattanooga at an incredibly slow pace, spending much of the time rebuilding railroad lines. While Halleck had overall command of the Union war effort in the West since the spring, he was summoned to Washington in July to become General-in-Chief of the armies, leaving Grant, Buell to their separate independent commands. Pope was also called east to take on command of the Union war effort in Virginia.
We know that didn't go too well.
And his former army added to Grant's and put under the command of William Rosecrans.
All right. Well, the initiative to invading Kentucky came primarily from Confederate Major General Edmund Kirby Smith, who was commander of the Department of East Tennessee.
That was the problem, though, with the Union in the first couple of years. They had way too many leaders and way too much.
Well, they had a leader for each section of their army.
Yeah, they had way too many people involved in battles. Look how Union and
we'll see the difference coming up when we.
All right, we're going
the order of battle here.
We're going hour going through all the infantry from the Union. 50 guys from this, 15 from there, 50 from there. Get the hell out of here.
Kirby Smith believed the campaign would allow them to obtain supplies, enlist recruits, divert Union troops from Tennessee, and claim Kentucky for the Confederacy.
All right.
July of 1862, Colonel John Hunt Morgan carried out a successful cavalry raid in the state, venturing deeply into the rare areas of Buell's department. The raid caused considerable consternation constipation in Buell's command and in Washington, D.C. During the raid, Morgan and his forces were cheered and supported by many residents. He added 300 Kentucky volunteers to his 900-man force during the raid. He confidently promised Kirby Smith, he says, the whole country can be secured, and 25,000 or 30,000 men will join you at once.
Ooh.
At once.
Really? Well, the Confederate Bragg...
He's a braggart.
Bragg considered various options, including an attempt to retake Corinth, Mississippi, or to advance against Buell's army from Middle Tennessee. He eventually heeded Kirby Smith's calls for reinforcement and decided to relocate his army in Mississippi to join with him. He moved 30,000 infantrymen in a tortuous railroad journey from Tupelo, Mississippi, through Mobile and Montgomery to Chattanooga, Alabama. Supply wagons, cavalry.
Wouldn't it be Chattanooga, Tennessee?
Chattanooga, Tennessee, yeah.
Maybe, right?
Maybe. Why would it go from...
Alabama to Tennessee?
Right, yeah. Yeah, Tennessee. Sorry, Chattanooga, Tennessee. Supply wagons, cavalry, artillery, they're all moved overland under their own power through Rome, Georgia. Although Bragg was the senior general in the theater, Confederate President Jefferson Davis had established Kirby Smith's department to East Tennessee as an independent command reporting directly to Richmond.
This decision caused Bragg difficulty during the campaign. Yeah. Smith and Bragg met in Chattanooga on July 31st and devised a plan for the campaign. The newly created Army of Kentucky, including 2 of Bragg's brigades and approximately 21,000 men, would march north under Kirby Smith's command into Kentucky to dispose of the Union defenders of the Cumberland Gap. Oh. Bragg's army was too exhausted from its long journey to begin immediate offensive operations. Right. Smith would return to join Bragg, and their combined forces would attempt to maneuver into Buell's rear and force a battle to protect his supply lines. Any attempt by Ulysses S. Grant to reinforce Buell from northern Mississippi would be handled by the 2 small armies of Sterling Price and Earl Van Dorn.
Okay. The first indication that something was happening came in late June, when Colonel Phil Sheridan, commanding a cavalry demi-brigade, which is 2 regiments, in the Army of the Tennessee, went on a reconnaissance mission to discover that the Confederates had abandoned their camp at Tupelo, and they began moving towards Chattanooga, while another Confederate army under Sterling Price was gathered in Mississippi. Several captured letters from the Confederate soldiers boasted that the Yankees would be given the slip. Major General William Rosecrans was impressed with Sheridan's foray and recommended him for a promotion to Brigadier General. He's like, look at that shit.
Okay. Once the armies were combined, Bragg's seniority would apply and Smith would be under his direct command. Assuming that Buell's army could be destroyed, Bragg and Smith would march north into Kentucky, a movement they assumed would be welcomed by the local populace.
Hey.
Any remaining Federal force would be defeated in a grand battle in Kentucky, establishing the Confederate frontier at the Ohio River.
Right.
The campaign plan was bold but risky, requiring perfect coordination between multiple armies. Well, we know that doesn't work. And would initially have no unity of command. Okay. Bragg almost immediately began to have second thoughts, despite pressure from President Davis to take Kentucky.
Hey.
He said, we need Kentucky.
Do it now. Smith quickly abandoned the agreement, foreseeing that a solo adventure in Kentucky would bring him personal glory.
Bitch.
He deceived Bragg as to his intentions and requested 2 additional brigades, specifically for his expedition to Cumberland Gap. August 9th, Smith informed Bragg that he was breaking the agreement, intended to bypass Cumberland Gap, leaving a small holding force to neutralize the Union garrison and to move north. Unable to command Smith to honor their plan, Bragg focused on a movement to Lexington instead of Nashville. He cautioned Smith that Buell could pursue and defeat his smaller army before Bragg's army could join.
Well, Smith didn't care because he marched north with 21,000 men from Knoxville on August 13th. Bragg didn't depart Chattanooga until August 27th, just before Smith reached Lexington. The beginning of this campaign coincided with Robert E. Lee's offensive in the North Virginia campaign, which was 2nd Manassas, and with Price and Van Dorn's operations against Grant at the same time. We got a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
Although not centrally directed, it was the largest simultaneous Confederate offensive of the war. Meanwhile, Buell was forced to abandon his slow advance toward Chattanooga. Receiving word of the Confederate movements, he decided to concentrate his army around Nashville instead.
Ooh.
The news that Smith and Bragg were both in Kentucky convinced him of the need to place his army between the Confederate and the Union cities of Louisville and Cincinnati. And on September 7th, Buell's Army of the Ohio left Nashville and began racing Bragg to Louisville. He said, who's going to get there first?
Oh, shit. On the way to Louisville, Bragg was distracted by the capture of a Union fort at Munfordville. He had to decide whether to continue toward a fight with Buell over Louisville or rejoin Smith, who had gained control of the center of the state by capturing Richmond and Lexington. No shit. And he threatened to move on to Cincinnati. Bragg chose to rejoin Smith. He's like, that seems fun over there. Buell reached Louisville, where he gathered, reorganized, and reinforced his army with thousands of new recruits. He dispatched 20,000 men under Brigadier General Joshua W. Sill toward Frankfort, hoping to distract Smith and prevent the two Confederate armies from joining against him. Meanwhile, Bragg left his army and met with Smith in Frankfort, where they attended the inauguration of Confederate Governor Richard Hawes on October 4th. The inauguration ceremony was disrupted by the sound of cannon fire from Sill's approaching division, and organizers canceled the inaugural ball scheduled for that evening.
Yeah, probably not a good idea.
Wait, we're not going to have the ball anymore? We'll see.
We'll see. No, TBD. When he departed for Frankfort on September 28th, Bragg left his army under Polk's command. October 3rd, the approach of the large Union force caused the Confederates to withdraw eastward, and Bardstown was occupied on October 4th. Hardee's wing from the Confederates stopped at Perryville and requested reinforcements from Bragg. Although Bragg wished to concentrate his army at Versailles, the quickly approaching Federal Third Corps forced a concentration at Perryville and Harrodsburg. They said, I guess we got to do it here.
Dang, Hardee had selected Perryville for a few reasons. The village was approximately 300 residents that had an excellent road network with connections to nearby towns in 6 directions, allowing for strategic flexibility. Hey, that's pretty good. It was located to prevent the Federals from reaching the Confederate supply depot in Bryantsville. Finally, it was a potential source of water. That's the most important. An extremely wet winter in spring of 1862, believed caused by the eruption of Mount Doobie in East Africa, really. I guess.
Yeah, would have brought the clouds over.
Right. And that happened in May of 1861. This gave way to dry conditions during June, which stayed that way throughout the summer and into early fall. Dang. The southern states remained locked under a stagnant high-pressure ridge that sent daytime temperatures soaring with little rain to cool things down. The heat was oppressive for both men and horses, and the few sources of drinking water provided by the rivers and creeks west of town, most reduced to isolated stagnant puddles, were desperately sought after.
You shouldn't be drinking that. You better boil it.
You want a running stream.
October 7th, Buell reached the Perryville area as Union cavalry clashed with Wheeler's rear guard throughout the day. Company of the Third Corps, Buell learned that the Confederates had halted at Perryville and were deploying their infantry. He therefore planned an attack. Enemy force was his principal objective, but the availability of water also made control of the town and surrounding area desirable. Buell issued orders for all corps to move at 3 a.m. the next day and attack at 10. However, movements of the 1st and 2nd Corps were delayed, having deviated several miles from their line of march in search of water. Water. You telling me it's not one damn stream or something?
Right.
A river?
Jeez. Buell decided to delay his attack until 9th of October to complete his army's deployment and ordered each corps commander to avoid a general engagement on the 8th of October. You don't get in anything, buddies. Buell was unable to oversee the deployment of his arriving corps. Thrown from his horse, he suffered injuries that prevented him from riding. He established his headquarters at the Dorsey Hotel. Dorsey House, about 3 miles due west of the town.
Ooh.
Hardee established a line of defense across the 3 roads leading into Perryville from the north and west. That's Confederate now. Until reinforcements could arrive, he was limited to 3 of the 4 brigades of Buckner's division. Brigadier General Sterling A.M. Wood was placed at the north of town. Brigadier General Bushrod Johnson was to Wood's right. Hell of a name, Bushrod Johnson. And east of the Chaplin River near the Harrodsburg Pike.
All right, Brigadier General St. John R. Liddell's Arkansas Brigade formed on the crest of Bottom Hill just east of Bull Run Creek, a tributary of Doctors Creek, with 1 regiment, the 7th Arkansas, sent forward to Peters Hill on the other side of the creek. Evening of October 7th, the final Confederate forces began to arrive. The first of Patton Anderson's 4 brigades reached the area about 3 p.m. Brigadier General Patrick Claiborne's brigade, the remainder of Buckner's division, followed. Around midnight, 3 brigades of Frank Chetham's division arrived, moving quickly and enthusiastically, having left their baggage train behind. His 4th Brigade, under Brigadier General Preston Smith, received orders to return to Harrodsburg.
October 1st, Buell's Army of Ohio left Louisville with Major General George H. Thomas as his second in command. 2 days earlier, Buell had received orders from Washington relieving him of command to be replaced by Thomas.
Jeez.
Thomas demurred, refusing to accept command while the campaign was underway, leaving Buell in place.
Good for you, Thomas.
Whatever, I guess. 55,000 troops, many of whom Thomas described as yet undisciplined, unprovided with suitable artillery, and in every way unfit for active operations against a disciplined foe. Well, good luck. I mean, you're in luck. The South is not a disciplined foe.
Right.
Anyway, they advanced towards Bragg's army in Bardstown on 3 separate roads.
Good for them. For the Union Army, we got the 1st Corps commanded by Major General Alexander M. McCook. He marched on the left along the Macville Road. His 13,000 men consisted of the 3rd Division under Brigadier Generals Lavelle Rousseau, and the 10th Division under Brigadier General James S. Jackson. 2nd Corps commanded by Major General Thomas L. Crittenden. They had about 20,000 men with William Suey Smith, Horatio P. Van Cleve, and Brigadier General Thomas J. Wood in that. 3rd Corps, commanded by Major General Charles Champion Gilbert. They were in the center. They got 22,000 men about, and 3 divisions of that, which were ran by Brigadier General Alban F. Shope, Brigadier General Robert B. Mitchell, and Brigadier General Philip H. Sheridan. A lot going on there, and then meanwhile...
Oh, wow. Bragg's army in Mississippi consisted of 16,800 men in 2 wings. Right wing, commanded by Major General Leonidas Polk, consisted of single division under Major General Benjamin F. Cheatham. Left wing, commanded by Major General William J. Hardy, consisted of divisions of Brigadier General Patton Anderson and Major General Simon B. Buckner.
That's it. Well, first shots of the battle were fired early on the morning of October 8th. I thought they said he didn't want to start till October 9th.
Right.
Finding that there were algae-covered pools of water in the otherwise dry bed of Doctor's Creek, troops from the 10th Indiana advanced to take advantage of them.
Ooh.
Algae-covered? What does that mean? Like underneath it's still good?
I guess.
They encountered the forward men of the 7th Arkansas, and some shots were exchanged. About 2 a.m., Buell and Gilbert, the 3rd Corps commander, ordered newly promoted Brigadier General Phil Sheridan to seize Peters Hill. Sheridan started off with the brigade of Colonel Daniel McCook, who was the younger brother of the 1st Corps commander. Oh, look at that. Sheridan seized the hill, driving the Arkansans back to the main line of the brigade, but continued to push across the creek. Liddell from the Confederates brigade could not check the momentum of Sheridan's thirsty soldiers, and Buckner, Liddell's division commander, was ordered by Polk not to reinforce him, but to pull his brigade back. Why?
Polk was concerned about starting a general engagement to the west of the Chaplin River, fearing he was outnumbered, which he was. Meanwhile, on the Union side, a nervous Gilbert ordered Sheridan to return to Peters Hill. For the preceding few days, Braxton Bragg had been deceived by the diversion launched by Sills against Frankfort, assuming that it was the major thrust of Buell's army. He wanted Polk to attack and defeat what he considered to be a minor force at Perryville, and then immediately return so that the entire army could be joined with Kirby Smith's. Polk sent a dispatch to Bragg early that morning that he intended to attack vigorously, but he quickly changed his mind and settled on a defensive posture. Bragg, angered that he was not hearing the sounds of battle, rode from Harrodsburg to Perryville to take charge, arriving at about 10 a.m. and establishing headquarters at Crawford House on the Harrodsburg Pike. Look at that shit.
Coming in to get himself. Well, he was appalled at the condition of Polk's battle line, which contained gaps and was not properly anchored on the flanks.
Wow.
As he rode in, he observed some of McCook's 1st Corps troops north of town, but he assumed that the primary threat continued to be on the Springfield Pike, where the action against the 3rd Corps had taken place early that morning. He had no knowledge of Crittenden's 2nd Corps approaching on the Lebanon Pike. Okay, you should probably have knowledge of that.
Right.
He gave orders to realign his army into a north-south line and prepare to attack in echelon. Cheatham's division marched north from town and prepared to open the attack on the Union left, which Bragg assumed to be on the Macville Road, beginning a large left wheel movement.
Right.
2 brigades from Patton Anderson's division would then strike the Union center, and Buckner's division would follow up on the left.
Okay.
Take them all.
Nice little plan there. Another of Anderson's brigades, commanded by Colonel Samuel Powell, would attack further to the south along the Springfield Pike. The large clouds of dust raised by Cheatham's division marching north at the double quick prompted some of the McCook's men to believe the Confederates were starting to retreat. They're like, oh, they're leaving.
No, that dust. It must be leaving.
Right, which this increased the surprise of the rebel attack later in the day. Nice. By the afternoon of October 8th, most of Buell's... Oh, it's so stupid. They don't got nobody watching this shit.
Right. How do you not see thousands of men, first of all?
By the afternoon of October 8th, most of Buell's army had arrived. They were positioned with McCook's 1st Corps on the left from the Benton Road to the Macville Road. Gilbert's 3rd Corps in the center on the Springfield Pike. Crittenden's 2nd Corps on the right along the Lebanon Pike. The vast majority of the action during the battle would be against McCook's corps, of course. Because of an unusual acoustic shadow, few sounds from the battle reached Buell's headquarters only 2 miles away. He did not exert effective control over the battle and committed to reserves until late in the day. Well, he's all laid up, too. Poor guy.
This is the second episode in a row we've heard about acoustic shadows not
hearing stuff.
What the hell was that about? Chetham's artillery bombardment began at 12:30 p.m., but he did not immediately order his infantry forward. Union troops continued to file in the line, extending their flank to the north beyond the intended avenue of attack. Bragg moved Chetham's division into Walker's Bend, assuming the redirected attack would now strike the Union's open flank. Unfortunately for the Confederates, their cavalry reconnaissance withdrew before McCook placed an artillery battery under Lieutenant Charles Parsons and the brigade of Brigadier General William R. Terrell in the Open Knob, a prominent hill on the northern end of the battlefield. So, Bragg, you got to do a little bit more
Right.
studying of the shit going on here, bud.
Yeah, he's very about to get routed, I bet. The brigade of Brigadier General Daniel S. Donaldson of the South was the first to cross the Chaplin River, climbed the bluffs on the west bank, and began its attack around 2 p.m. 2 of the brigade's regiments had been detached, leaving only 3 for the attack. Cheatham shouted, "Give 'em hell, boys!" One of the enduring legends of the Civil War is that General Polk, who was also an Episcopal bishop, was nearby and seconded the cheer. "Give 'em to 'em, boys! Give 'em what the General Cheatham says."
Hell.
Right. The brigade found that instead of striking the open flank it had expected, it was performing a frontal assault on the center of the Union position.
Oh, that's probably not what you wanted.
They're like, oh, shit.
Right.
We're going to hell, boys.
The 16th Tennessee Infantry under Colonel John H. Savage of the Confederates raced ahead of the 2 other regiments, attempting to reach the artillery battery of Captain Samuel J. Harris. Savage held Donaldson in disdain, considering him a drunkard with limited military ability and often paid little attention to orders from his commander. He considered Donaldson's order to attack Harris's battery to be a death sentence against him.
Oh, shit.
So, what is this? That Smith guy is trying to deceive Bragg, and now you got these 2 guys over here don't like each other. What the hell's up with the Confederates?
Right.
As it moved west into a depression, it came under crossfire from the 33rd Ohio Infantry and the 8 guns of Parsons' artillery on Open Knob, 200 yards to the north. Cheatham ordered the brigade of Brigadier General George E. Maney followed forward to deal with Parsons on the Open Knob, but Donaldson's brigade could not withstand the fire and withdrew to its starting point at 2:30 p.m. So nothing. With about 20% casualties, Savage's regiment lost 219 of his 370 men.
Dang.
That's what you get, Savage, for savaging your way ahead of the other 2 regiments.
Holy shit. Parsons' 8 guns on the Open Knob were manned by inexperienced soldiers, some of whom were infantry recruits from the 105th Ohio. Terrell's 33rd Brigade was posted to defend the guns. Meanwhile, Confederate Brigadier General George Maney's brigade was able to approach the knob undetected through the woods as the Union troops' attention was focused on Donaldson's attack. Eventually, Union artillery redirected their guns, and a fierce firefight ensued. Brigadier General Jackson, the 10th Division commander, was killed in action.
Ooh.
And command fell to Terrell, who immediately made a poor command decision. Obsessed with the safety of his artillery, he ordered the 123rd Illinois to mount a bayonet charge down the hill.
Oh, what an idiot.
Shit. The 770 raw Union troops suffered heavy casualties at the hands of 1,800 veteran Confederates. Wow.
Those reinforcements arrived from the 80th Illinois and a detachment of infantry commanded by Colonel Theophilus T. Girard. The 2 sides were briefly stalemated. Maney's artillery, commanded by Lieutenant William Turner, pounded the inexperienced defenders, and Maney ordered a charge up the steep slope, which swept the Union men from the hill and captured most of Parsons' guns. Man. The tenacious Parsons had to be dragged away from the scene by his retreating soldiers, though.
They even went uphill and did that shit. He never won a battle going uphill.
Oh, he had to be dragged away from the scene because he's so tenacious.
Right.
But meanwhile, just sent 700 of his guys to get slaughtered.
Maney's attack continued to the west, down the reverse slope of the Open Knob, through a cornfield, across the Benton Road, after which was another steep ridge, occupied by 2,200 men in the Union 28th Brigade of Colonel John C. Starkweather. This is Russo's division. And 12 guns were there. These guns made the Open Knob an untenable position. Starkweather had placed his 21st Wisconsin in the cornfield about the time that Maney was attacking Parsons' position. The inexperienced men of the 21st, some of whom had never fired their weapons before, the regiment having been formed less than a month earlier, could see little through the 10 to 12 foot high corn stalks, of course.
All right.
They were surprised that the remnants of Terrell's brigade retreated through their position. They're like, oh, shit.
What the hell are you guys doing? You're supposed to be up there? As Terrell himself retreated, he shouted, "The rebels are advancing in terrible force." Terrell convinced the regimental adjutant to order yet another bayonet charge. 200 men advanced and were quickly smashed by the oncoming Confederates.
Dude.
While the Union men had to hold their fire to keep from shooting their retreating comrades, artillery fire from Starkweather's batteries caused numerous friendly fire casualties.
Damn right it did.
21st managed to fire a volley into the Confederate ranks, but it was answered by a 1,400 musket volley that decimated the Union regiment.
Holy shit.
And the survivors fled toward the Benton Road, 1,400 at a time. So wham! Yeah, I would say that would do a little damage.
Oh, my. To fill a gap in the Confederate line where Donelson's brigade had fought, Cheatham deployed the Tennessee Brigade of Brigadier General Alexander Stewart, and they joined Maney's brigade in an advance against Starkweather. The 1st Tennessee attacked the northern end of the hill, while the remainder of Maney's brigade assaulted directly up the slope. Starkweather's position was a strong one, however.
Oh, a strong one.
And the Confederates were initially repulsed by strong infantry and artillery fire. The second charge and vicious hand-to-hand fighting brought the Confederates to the crest among the batteries.
Uh-oh.
See, that's where the Confederates wanted. They wanted to get close-up battles.
Right.
The guns were discharged so rapidly that it seemed Earth itself was in a volcanic uproar. The iron storm passed through our ranks, mangling and tearing men to pieces. The very air seemed full of stifling smoke and fire, which seemed the very pit of hell, peopled by contending demons. Private Sam Watkins, 1st Tennessee.
Yeah, I bet. At the time, Brigadier General Terrell returned to the fight, leading his troops up the reverse slope of the hill. He was mortally wounded by an artillery shell exploding overhead and died at 2 a.m. the following day.
Oh, shit.
Starkweather, meanwhile, was able to salvage 6 of his 12 guns and move them 100 yards west to the next ridge, whatever the next ridge was. Colonel Albert S. Hall began the day as regimental commander of the 105th Ohio, and with the deaths of Jackson, Terrell, and Colonel George Webster, he advanced all the way to command of the 10th Division by the end of the day. That's a hell of a promotion, huh?
Like, damn, I was just giving you all bowls of soup earlier.
I was just commanding like these 25 guys, and now I'm commanding thousands.
Once again, the Federals had a strong defensive position, with good artillery support and a stone wall at the top of the steep slope. Maney's and Stewart's men attempted 3 assaults, all unsuccessful, and withdrew to the vicinity of the open knob at around 5:30 p.m. The assault by Maney's brigade over 3 hours was the bloodiest of the battle, and arguably its most crucial action. Historian Kenneth W. Noe describes Maney's final repulse as the high water mark of the Confederacy in the Western Theater, no less important than the angle at Gettysburg.
Gettysburg. The en echelon attack continued with Anderson's division in the center. At 2:45 p.m., the same time that Maney's first attack was being repulsed on the open knob, the brigade of Colonel Thomas M. Jones began its attack across a valley commanded by a large sinkhole. Okay.
All right.
Jones had no orders to attack from Anderson or Hardee, but moved forward on his own initiative when he heard the sound of firing to his right. As they entered the valley, his men were cut down by musketry and fire from 12 artillery pieces on the next ridge, where the Union 9th Brigade, which is Rousseau's division under Colonel Leonard A. Harris, was posted. This is what happens when you just rush in and do shit by yourself, guys. Haven't you guys learned?
They don't learn nothing. Confederate artillery attached to Jones' brigade, Captain Charles Lumsden's Alabama Light Artillery, returned fire. But due to an optical illusion that made 2 successive ridges look the same, they were unable to fix on the appropriate range, and their fire had no effect on the Federal line.
Nice.
3:30 p.m., the Confederate brigade of Brigadier General John Brown moved up to take the place of Jones' retreating men. By this time, most of the Union artillery had to withdraw to replenish their ammo, so Brown's men did not suffer the same fate as Jones. Nevertheless, they made no headway against the infantry units in place until successes on the Confederate left put pressure on the Union post. Okay, so you got some coming in on the left, get some help.
Well, maybe. Almost all of McCook's 1st Corps units were posted at the beginning of the battle on land owned by Squire Henry P. Bottom. The Corps' right flank, Colonel William L. Little's 17th Brigade, was posted on a ridge on which Squire Bottom's house and barn were situated, overlooking a bend in the Chaplin River and a hill and farm owned by R.F. Chatham on the other side. About 2:30 p.m., Major John E. Austin's 14th Battalion of Louisiana Sharpshooters, which was screening Brigadier General Daniel W. Adams' Confederate Brigade, engaged the 42nd Indiana as it was collecting water in the ravine of Doctor's Creek. That's dirty, man. Let them get their water at least.
Right, come on.
This began a Confederate attack against this area with Brigadier General Bushrod Johnson's brigade descending from Chatham House Hill about 2:45 p.m., crossing the almost dry riverbed and attacking the 3rd Ohio Infantry commanded by Colonel John Beatty.
Uh-oh. Beatty?
Beatty. Right, Beatty.
The attack was disorganized. Last-minute changes of orders from Buckner were not distributed to all of the participating units, and friendly fire from Confederate artillery broke their lines while still on Chatham House Hill, you dumb sons of bitches. When the infantry attack eventually moved up the hill, fighting from the stone wall to stone wall, Confederate artillery bombarded the 3rd Ohio and set afire Squire's Bottom's log barn.
Squire. Okay, just burning guys' barn, dude.
Right. Some of the Union wounded soldiers had sought refuge in the barn, and many were burned to death. The Ohioans withdrew and were replaced in their position by the 15th Kentucky. As Johnson's men ran low on ammunition, Brigadier General Patrick R. Claiborne's brigade entered the battle at around 3:40 p.m. Claiborne's horse, Dixie, was killed by an artillery shell, which also wounded Claiborne in the ankle. But he kept his troops moving forward.
Good for him, huh?
Damn horse.
But he was pissed about his horse, though. I would admit. As they advanced up the slope, they were subjected to Confederate artillery fire. Claiborne later surmised that the friendly fire was caused by his men wearing blue uniform trousers, which had been captured from Union soldiers at Richmond.
Right.
On Claiborne's left, Brigadier General Daniel W. Adams' brigade joined the attack against the 15th Kentucky, which had been reinforced by the 3 companies of the 3rd Ohio. Union troops retreated to the west toward the Russell House, McCook's headquarters. Colonel Little was wounded in the head as he attempted to rally his men. He was left on the field for dead, and he was captured.
Oh, no. Jeez.
Leave him for dead.
What soldier under Buell will forget the horrible affair at Perryville, where 30,000 men stood idly by to see and hear the needless slaughter of McCook's unaided, neglected, and even abandoned command, without firing a shot or moving a step in its relief. Colonel John M. Connell, 17th Ohio, speaking at a regimental reunion 20 years later.
Damn, so he's like, this fucking piece of shit Buell could have done something.
Jeez.
Well, I already said that he was blind or couldn't hear because of the acoustic fucking whatever.
Right. While Little's brigade was being beaten back, the left flank of Phil Sheridan's division was only a few hundred yards to the south of Peters Hill. One of the lingering controversies of the battle has been why he did not choose to join to fight Oilia. Early in the day, he had been ordered by Gilbert not to bring on a general engagement, and around 2 p.m., the sound of artillery fire reached Army headquarters, where Buell was having dinner.
Time. He's like, what the hell is that?
He was having dinner with Gilbert. The 2 generals assumed that it was Union artillery practicing and sent word to Sheridan not to waste gunpowder. You tell those idiots.
Damn Sheridan, you fucking retard. Come on, man.
Oh, jeez. Sheridan did project.
Well, is that nice? These fucking assholes over here eating dinner and shit.
All right.
And Buell knew that they were going to attack somewhere, so even if he couldn't hear it, he knew something was going on somewhere.
Jeez.
Fucking just over there eating fucking potatoes and steaks and shit.
Sheridan did project some artillery fire in the Confederate assault, but when Gilbert finally arrived from the rear, he feared that Sheridan would be attacked and ordered him back to his entrenchments.
He's like, holy shit, there is people here.
Right. Whoa, damn.
Sheridan's division did participate toward the end of the battle, though.
Hey.
Good for them. The Confederate brigade of Colonel Samuel Powell, which was in Anderson's was in Anderson's division, and was ordered to advance in conjunction with Adams' brigade on Cleburne's left. 2 brigades were widely separated, however, with Powell's on Edwards House Hill, immediately west of Perryville.
Hey.
About 4 p.m., Powell received orders from Bragg to advance west on the Springfield Pike to silence the battery of Captain Henry Hescock, which was firing into the left flank of Bragg's assault. Bragg assumed this was an isolated battery, not the entire 3rd Corps, which it was.
Hey.
3 regiments of Powell's brigade encountered Sheridan's division, and although Sheridan was initially concerned by the Confederates' aggressiveness and sent for reinforcements, 3 regiments were quickly repulsed. He said, screw these guys, I'll get them.
Well, Sheridan, who would be characterized in later battles as very aggressive, hesitated to pursue the smaller force, and also refused a request by Daniel McCook to move north in support of the brothers' corps.
He's like, no.
However, his earliest request for reinforcements bore fruit, and the 31st Brigade of Colonel William P. Carlin of Mitchell's division moved up on Sheridan's right. Carlin's men moved aggressively in pursuit of Powell, chasing them as fast as they can run toward Perryville. As they reached the cemetery on the western outskirts of town, fierce artillery dueling commenced. Why is it always at cemeteries? Carlin pressed forward and was joined by the 21st Brigade of Colonel George D. Wagner of Wood's Division's 2nd Corps.
Good for him. Well, they were poised to capture the town and the critical crossroads that dominated Braxton Bragg's avenue of withdrawal, but an order from Gilbert to Mitchell curtailed the advance, despite Mitchell's furious protestations.
Ooh.
Protestations. It was like running a marathon over fences and ditches and cornfields, the enemy ahead and we in pursuit. At times, we were so close that I was once able to give a rebel a kick in the rear.
Hey, nice.
So said Arthur Siver from the 15th Wisconsin.
Fantastic. You kicked that rebel in the rear.
Nice.
Bragg's attack had been a large pincer movement, forcing both Frank's and McCook's corps back into a concentrated mass. This mass occurred at the Dixville Crossroads, where the Benton Road crossed the Mackville Road. If the Confederates seized this intersection, they could conceivably get around the right wing of McCook's corps and effectively cut them off from the rest of the army.
Oh, you'd be screwed.
The southern jaw of the pincer began to slow at the temporary line established at the Russell House. Harris's and Little's brigades defended until Claiborne's and Adams' attack ground to a halt. The northern jaw had been stopped by Starkweather's defense.
Nice.
The remaining attacks come from the north of Mackville Road by 2 fresh brigades from Buckner's division, Brigadier General St. John R. Liddell's and Brigadier General Sterling A.M. Woods'.
All right, well, the initial target of the assault was Colonel George Webster's 34th Brigade of Jackson's division. Webster was mortally wounded during the fighting.
Poor guy.
His death marked the final senior loss for the 10th Division. The division commander Jackson and the other brigadier commander Terrell, which we already said, dies. Previous evening, Jackson, Terrell, and Webster had been idly discussing the possibility that all of them being killed in the battle. Then they dismissed it and thought it as being mathematically negligible.
They're like, nah, that's not going to happen.
Nope. Webster's infantry and Captain Harris's artillery battery posted on a hill near the Benton Road shot Wood's attackers to pieces, and they were forced to fall back.
Look at that shit. They regrouped at the base of the hill, renewed their assault. Harris's battery ran low on ammo and had to withdraw, and the Confederate attack pushed Webster's men back toward the crossroads.
Okay.
Meet me at the crossroads. Colonel Michael Gooding's 13th Brigade, Mitchell's division, arrived on the field from Gilbert's corps and took up the fight, which his men withdrew and were replaced by Liddell's. The arrival of reinforcements was a result of McCook's belated attempts to secure aid for his beleaguered corps.
Of course.
At 2:30 p.m., he sent an aide to Sheridan on Peters Hill, requesting that he secure the 1st Corps right flank. McCook dispatched a 2nd staff officer at 3 p.m. to obtain assistance from the nearest 3rd Corps unit. The officer encountered Brigadier General Elbin F. Schoaf, commanding the 1st Division of the 3rd Corps Reserve.
Unwilling to act on his own authority, Schoaf referred the staff officer to Gilbert, who in turn referred him to Buell's headquarters more than 2 miles away. The arrival of McCook's staff officer at about 4 p.m. surprised the Army commander, who had heard little battle noise and found it difficult to believe that a major Confederate attack had been underway for some time.
Really?
Nevertheless, Buell ordered 2 brigades from Schoaf's division to support the 1st Corps. This relatively minor commitment indicated Buell's unwillingness to accept that reported dire situation at face value. So he's like, I don't really believe it, but here's a few guys.
Right.
Piece of shit you are, Buell.
Right. Liddell's men fired.
What the fuck is it up with these Union commanders, dude? They are idiots.
So dumb. Sitting there eating lunch.
Right.
Liddell's men fired at an unknown unit less than 100 yards east of the crossroads. Calls were heard. You are firing upon friends. For God's sake, stop. Leonidas Polk, the wing commander, decided to ride forward to see who had been the victims of the supposedly friendly fire. Polk found that he had ridden in by mistake into the lines of 22nd Indiana.
Oh, no.
And was forced to bluff his way out by riding down the Union line, pretending to be a Union officer and shouting at federal troops to cease fire.
Oh, my.
When he had escaped, he shouted to Liddell, and the Confederate fired hundreds of muskets in a single volley, which killed Colonel Squeer. Man, what's up with his name, Squeer?
Squire.
Nobody ever had that name back then.
No. Same as Bartholomew and fucking Theophilus.
Which killed Colonel Squire Keith and caused casualties 65% of the 22nd Indiana, the highest percentage any Federal regiment engaged at Perryville.
So that's another case of a Union high up guy, fucking a Confederate guy up guy just going and
stopping them,
pretty much riding right in front of them. Like, hey guys, look at me.
He did it the first time. Oh, it was Jackson.
It's ridiculous. Although Liddell wanted to pursue the assault, Polk had been unnerved by his personal contact with the enemy. Yeah, I bet. He's like, "Whoa, guys!" And he halted attack, blaming the falling darkness. He said, "I gotta change the shit out of my pants." Right. The Union units moved their supplies and equipment through the endangered, and consolidated their lines on a chain of hills 200 yards northwest. McCook's corps had been badly damaged during the day, but was not destroyed.
Union casualties totaled 4,276, 894 killed. 2,911 wounded, 471 captured and missing. Confederate casualties were 3,401, with 532 killed, 2,641 wounded, 228 captured or missing. In all, casualties totaled 1/5 of those involved. Pretty good. Significant.
Mm-hmm.
I was in every battle, skirmish, and march that was made by the 1st Tennessee Regiment during the war. I do not remember of a harder contest and more evenly fought battle than that of Perryville. If it had been two men wrestling, it would have been called a dog fall. Both sides claimed victory, both whipped. Private Sam Watkins, 1st Tennessee.
Yeah, I would say. I mean, it was pretty back and forth, this whole battle here. Braxton Bragg had arguably won a tactical victory, though, having fought aggressively and pushed his opponent back for over a mile.
I would say, yeah.
Yeah, but his precarious strategic situation became clear to him as he found out about the Third Corps advance on the Springfield Pike, and when he learned late in the day of the Second Corps present at the Lebanon Pike.
Right.
At 9 p.m., he met with his subordinates at the Crawford House and gave orders to begin a withdrawal after midnight, leaving a picket line in place while his army joined up with Kirby Smith's. As the army marched towards Harrodsburg, they were forced to leave 900 wounded men behind.
Oh, shit. You don't leave nobody behind. What the hell are you guys thinking?
Clearly they did.
Wow. Bragg united his forces with Smith's at Harrodsburg, and the Union and Confederate armies, now of comparable size, skirmished with one another over the next week or so. Nice. But neither attacked. Bragg soon realized that the new infantry recruits he had sought from Kentucky would not be forthcoming.
Yeah, they're like, nobody wants to join us now.
Although many Kentuckians were willing to join the Confederate cavalry.
Well, I guess never mind.
Furthermore, Bragg concluded that he lacked the logistical support he needed to remain in the state. He made his way southeast to Knoxville, Tennessee, through the Cumberland Gap. He's like, I'm going freaking Tennessee.
Yeah. Well, Bragg was quickly called to the Confederate capital, Richmond, to explain to Jefferson Davis the charges brought by his officers about how he had conducted his campaign, who were demanding that he be replaced as head of the army.
Oh, shit.
Although Davis decided to leave the general in command, Bragg's relationship with his subordinates would be severely damaged, you think?
All right.
Upon rejoining the army, he ordered a movement to Murfreesboro, Tennessee.
Yeah, that's a lot of people ain't listening to that dude.
Yeah, right. And he's like, fuck you guys.
Right. Buell conducted a half-hearted pursuit of Bragg and returned to Nashville, rather than pushing on east to Tennessee, as the Lincoln administration had wished.
Lincoln's a bitch, dude. He's just letting these people do whatever they want.
Pent up dissatisfaction with Buell's performance resulted in a reorganization of the Western departments. October 24th, a new department of the Cumberland was formed under Major General William S. Rosecrans, and Buell's Army of the Ohio was assigned to it. Reed designated the 14th Corps after the Battle of Stones River at Murfreesboro. Buell was ordered to appeal before a commission investigating his conduct during the campaign. He remained in military limbo for a year and a half, his career essentially ruined. He resigned from the service in May 1864.
Well, hey, at least he got out alive, huh? Following the battle, the Union maintained control of Kentucky for the rest of the war.
Right.
Historian James N. McPherson considers Perryville to be a part of a great turning point of the war. He says when battles of Antietam and Perryville threw back Confederate invasions, forestalled European mediation and recognition of the Confederacy, perhaps prevented a Democratic victory in the northern elections of 1862 that might have inhibited the government's ability to carry on the war and set the stage for the Emancipation Proclamation, which enlarged the scope and purpose of the conflict.
Oh.
Only 2 days after the battle, the drought suddenly ended as a cold front pushed through the region and brought rain and cool temperatures across Kentucky.
Look at that shit.
Hell yeah.
Wow. Portions of the battlefield of Perryville are preserved by the state of Kentucky as Perryville Battlefield State Historic Site. Also, the Perryville Historic District covering downtown Perryville includes buildings which had roles in the battle, including the Elmwood Mansion, which was pressed into use as a field hospital during the battle.
Right.
American Battlefield Trust, its members and the offices of Kentucky Nature Review, motherfucker. Its members and the Office of Kentucky Nature Preserves, Kentucky Heritage Land Conservation Fund have saved 1,202 acres at the Perryville battlefield through late 2021.
Well, good for him.
It'd be nice to go to Perryville.
Probably not, though. Maybe. That'll do it for Perryville. Not a real winner there. Everybody was back and forth.
All right.
They were getting repulsed here, and then they were moving up and getting repulsed there, and then people were dying here, and then people were dying there, and
turmoil in the south and terrible leadership in the north.
Right.
Oh, man.
Per usual for this war so far. Well, coming up, we got a 14-day break. So we go from October 8th to the 22nd, which the 22nd, we got two battles. The Battle of Pocataglio and the Battle of Old Fort Wayne.
Old Fort Wayne, Indiana, Oklahoma.
The former one in South Carolina and the other one in Oklahoma, which is Indian territory.
Look at that shit.
It's going to be some more Indian fights there.
Oh, man.
And probably on the next episode, we'll also have the Battle of Georgia Landing, which is in Louisiana.
Louisiana Vals.
And probably about 2 more episodes away from the Battle of Fredericksburg.
Yeah, the Confederates go on a little run here.
Well, pretty much the same. We got a lot of Murfreesboro, which was just mentioned, where, what's his name took his army.
Yeah.
We'll have a second battle of Murfreesboro ending the year. So with that being said, go check us out at the Outlaws and Gunslingers podcast as well, where this week's episode is going to be about a little girl gone missing and eventually found murdered. And what we think we have the suspect all wrapped up with a life sentence to death actually turns out quite different.
Oh, man.
In that case, Outlaws and Gunslingers, wherever you get your podcasts. Also, This Week in Sports History, which is on this very bang dang network.
It's very bang.
And if you want to trim your balls, go to manscaped.com, 20% off and free shipping. Use the code TrueCrime, and you will get all that you desire from them and some clean, waxy balls, I guess.
Right.
Yeah, we're back for a couple more battles next week. It's the Battle of American Civil War. We are the Mother Music End of the Week.
Payday.